My husband went on a business trip and forgot his iPad at home. That night, a message popped up, "Last night was amazing. When can we do it again?" My hand shook as I opened the chat. There were pictures. Videos. Proof. I didn't cry, I started planning. When he returned, I greeted him with a candlelit dinner. And a special presentation on the TV that made his jaw drop. His mistress was watching too. Then, she said something that changed everything. I never thought I'd be sharing my story here, but life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges our way. I'm hoping that by writing this down, I can find some clarity and maybe even help someone else who's going through something similar. So, here it goes. My name is Sarah, and I've been married to David for 8 years. We live in a cozy suburban neighborhood in Austin, Texas, with our 2-year-old daughter, Lily. David works as a sales manager for a tech company, which often requires him to travel for business. I always believed these trips were legitimate and never questioned them. Our marriage, like any other, had its ups and downs, but I trusted David completely. One Thursday morning, David was preparing for a 3-day business trip to Dallas. The usual routine unfolded, packing his suitcase, double-checking his itinerary, and sharing breakfast with Lily and me before heading out. As he kissed us goodbye, he assured me he'd call every evening to check in. I wished him a safe trip, not realizing that this departure would unravel the life I thought we had. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, I settled into the living room with a glass of wine, ready to unwind with a movie. As I reached for the remote, I noticed David's iPad on the coffee table. He must have forgotten it in his rush to leave. Thinking he might need it, I considered calling him but decided against it, assuming he'd manage without it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up the device, intending to browse the internet while watching TV. As I unlocked the screen, a message notification popped up, "Last night was amazing. When can we do it again?" My heart stopped. Hands trembling, I opened the messaging app to find a conversation with a contact named Samantha. The messages were explicit, detailing encounters and plans to meet again. Attached were photos and videos, undeniable proof of David's infidelity. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Tears threatened to spill, but I swallowed them back. Crying could come later, right now, I needed to think. I spent the night poring over their exchanges, piecing together the timeline of their affair. It had been going on for months, with meetings during his business trips and even lunches here in Austin. The betrayal cut deep, but amidst the pain, a steely resolve began to form. I wasn't going to confront him in anger or dissolve into a mess of tears. No, I was going to make sure he felt the weight of his actions. The next day, I called my best friend, Laura, and confided everything. She was furious on my behalf and offered her unwavering support. Together, we devised a plan. David was due back Saturday evening. I would prepare a special welcome home dinner, complete with candles and his favorite meal. But the piece de resistance would be the after-dinner entertainment. Saturday arrived, and I went about my day as if everything were normal. I took Lily to the park, did some grocery shopping, and prepared the evening meal. As dusk settled, I set the dining table with our best china, lit the candles, and dressed in David's favorite blue dress. When he walked through the door, he seemed pleasantly surprised. "Wow, Sarah, this is unexpected." He leaned in to kiss me, and I forced myself to respond, the taste of deceit bitter on my lips. "I thought we could have a special night, just the two of us." I smiled, leading him to the table. Dinner was a quiet affair, with David recounting his trip and me nodding in all the right places. After dessert, I suggested we move to the living room for a movie. He agreed, settling onto the couch as I queued up a video on the TV. As the screen lit up, the images that filled it were all too familiar, messages, photos, videos, all from his affair with Samantha. David's face drained of color. "What is this?" he stammered. "This?" I said, my voice calm. "This is what you've been doing during your business trips." He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the TV screen split to reveal a live video feed. There was Samantha, sitting in what appeared to be her living room, looking directly into the camera. "David, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. David's eyes widened in shock. "Samantha? What, how?" "I've been trying to reach you, but you've been ignoring my calls," she continued. "I didn't know how else to get your attention." I turned to David, my expression hard. "You see, after discovering your affair, I reached out to Samantha. Turns out, she didn't know you were married." David buried his face in his hands. "Sarah, save it, David." I cut him off. "I've already contacted a lawyer." David just sat there, stunned. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. I stared at him, silent, waiting. Waiting to see what lie he'd spin first. Samantha's voice broke the silence. Sarah. I'm so sorry. I swear, I had no idea. He told me he was divorced. I glanced at the screen. She looked shaken, maybe even crying. Her mascara was smudged. She looked nothing like the confident woman in the videos on his iPad. This was someone who'd just realized she'd been lied to too. I stayed quiet. I wanted her to talk. I wanted to hear what else she knew. She wiped her eyes. He told me his wife took his daughter and moved to Denver. That he was starting over. That's why he couldn't have me over at his place. I believed him. I swear. I looked at David. His eyes were locked on the floor. No apology. No explanation. Just shame and silence. Typical. Then Samantha added something that made my stomach drop. He told me he loved me, Sarah. That he was going to propose. He said he just needed time. I turned to David slowly. You were going to marry her? My voice cracked on that last word. While still married to me? He finally looked up. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I laughed. I actually laughed. You didn't mean for it to go this far? David, you were living a second life. Not just cheating. You created a whole other reality. His voice got louder. You don't understand. Then help me, I snapped, my voice suddenly cold. Make me understand how you got from I love you to this. I pointed at the screen, still frozen on Samantha's tearful face. And then, just when I thought I'd heard it all, Samantha said something that completely threw me off. I think I'm pregnant. I stared at the TV, unblinking. David's head shot up. What? No, that can't be. You said, I missed my period. I've taken 2 tests, she said, quietly. I haven't been to the doctor yet, but I will. I felt the room spinning. The walls felt closer. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. I could hear them talking faintly in the background, but it was all white noise now. A ringing in my ears took over. Pregnant. A baby. I looked at the family photos on the fridge. Our daughter, Lily, smiling in a Halloween costume. Us at Zilker Park last fall. And him, smiling, arms around both of us, like we were enough. A baby. I walked back into the living room, and both of them stopped talking. Let me be clear, I said, standing behind the couch. This ends tonight. David, you're staying somewhere else starting now. I'll pack your things. Don't come back until I say. He opened his mouth to object, but I raised a hand. And Samantha, good luck with whatever you decide to do. But from now on, I'm not involved in this circus. I have a daughter to protect. She nodded silently. I ended the call and turned off the TV. David stood up, like he was going to come closer. Don't. Just go upstairs and pack. I don't want to see your face. He stood there, frozen for a second. Then he walked slowly upstairs. I waited until I heard the door shut before collapsing onto the couch. And then, finally, I cried. But even as the tears came, I felt something else. Something sharper than the heartbreak. Rage. Because there was more to this. Something didn't sit right. Samantha looked too comfortable talking to me. Too prepared. Why the live call? Why now? Something about it felt staged. And I was going to find out what. After David left that night, I barely slept. I kept playing the scene over and over in my head, Samantha's face on the screen, the words I think I'm pregnant, David's blank stare, the quiet click of our bedroom door when he went upstairs to pack. But something about Samantha still didn't sit right with me. The way she looked into the camera. How she timed the call exactly. And that line, I didn't know how else to get your attention. It felt rehearsed. Too perfect. The next morning, I dropped Lily off with my mom and sat down with a cup of coffee and David's iPad. I knew his password. He never changed it. I started scrolling deeper, looking for more messages, more clues. That's when I found another name. Jade. I clicked it open, heart pounding. Messages. Photos. Videos. Another woman. Another affair. And this one had been going on longer. She lived in Houston. The chat log showed hotel bookings, gifts, weekends with the guys that were actually trips to see her. She called him D. She said she missed his cooking. She sent him pictures of a new couch they'd picked out together. I almost threw the iPad across the room. But I needed more. I searched his email. Found flight confirmations. Airbnb reservations. One receipt from a jewelry store in Dallas, dated 2 weeks ago. Engagement ring. The ring wasn't for Samantha. It was for Jade. Now I was shaking. He wasn't just cheating, he was building 3 separate lives. 3. I called Laura. She answered on the first ring. What happened? Are you okay? I found another one, I whispered. Another what? Another woman. Her name's Jade. He bought her a ring. Silence. You want me to come over? She asked. No. Not yet. I need to think. I need to process this. Okay. But Sarah, don't do anything alone. Please. After we hung up, I did the only thing I could think of, I found Jade. Social media made it easier than I expected. She worked in interior design. Had a business page. I messaged her from a fake account. I just said I needed to talk. Girl to girl. It was important. She replied within an hour. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between Austin and Houston. She drove up that afternoon. I didn't tell her who I was. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately. She was tall, well-dressed, older than Samantha, maybe late 30s. She looked confident, polished. Like she had her life together. I waited until she sat down. Hi. I'm Sarah. She blinked. Okay, I'm David's wife. Her face went blank. Then red. Then pale. What? I'm his wife. 8 years. We have a daughter. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. He told me he was divorced. Said the paperwork was just taking time because of custody issues. He said the same thing to Samantha. She thinks she's pregnant. Her eyes went wide. She covered her mouth with one hand. Then she whispered, he proposed to me last weekend. There it was. The ring. The lies. All of it. He played all of us, I said. And I don't think it's just us either. We sat in silence for a few moments, both of us processing the train wreck we were standing in. Then Jade said something I'll never forget. There's something else. He's been asking me for money. What? I leaned forward. Last month. He said he was caught up in a legal mess with his company. He asked for a loan. 10 grand. I gave him 5. My jaw dropped. He said it was urgent. That he'd pay me back as soon as his bonus cleared. He told me he got a bonus 2 weeks ago, I said, realizing just how deep this hole went. We were quiet again. The waitress came by. We both waved her off. Then Jade pulled out her phone. I had the transfers. Bank statements. And the texts. I nodded. We need to talk to Samantha. Jade looked at me like I was insane. Why would she help us? She's part of this whether she wants to be or not. He's lying to all of us. We deserve to know the whole picture. So I messaged Samantha again. And within an hour, all 3 of us were in a group video chat. Awkward. Silent at first. But then the floodgates opened. Samantha listened quietly as Jade and I laid everything out, how long he'd been with each of us, the overlapping dates, the ring, the money. She didn't speak for a full minute. Then she just said, I'm not pregnant. Jade and I looked at each other through the screen. What? I asked. I lied, she said. I was trying to get him to call me back. He ghosted me after I told him I was suspicious about something. I wanted to scare him. Jade looked like she was about to explode. He lied to me, so I lied back, Samantha said, tears forming. But I didn't know about you too. I felt like I'd stepped into a soap opera. 3 women. 1 man. And he was lying to all of us. And something in my gut told me we weren't the only ones. So I started digging deeper. I called his office pretending to be a client. The receptionist said David hadn't worked there for months. He was fired in January. It was April. I stared at the phone in my hand, completely frozen. David hasn't worked here since January, the receptionist said again. He was let go. I'm not sure what he's told you, ma'am, but he hasn't stepped into this building in 3 months. I mumbled a thank you and hung up. My heart was pounding in my chest. My ears were ringing again, just like when I saw that first message. I sank into the kitchen chair, head spinning. What had he been doing every day when he left the house? Where had he been going? He wasn't just cheating. He wasn't just living a double, or triple, life. He had no job. He'd been lying about everything. Rent. Groceries. Our daughter's daycare. The money. He was stealing from me. From Lily. I texted Laura one sentence, "I need you to come over. I'm about to lose it." 10 minutes later, she was at the door. I showed her everything, Jade's texts, Samantha's messages, the bank transfers, the call with his job. Her face went from confused to horrified to pure rage. "We have to confront him," she said. "Public. Full exposure." I nodded. "I want him to feel it. Every second of it." We planned it for a Saturday afternoon. Jade drove up. Samantha joined us too, nervous but willing. Laura reserved a private room at a local restaurant. One of David's favorites. I told David I wanted to talk about working things out. That I missed him. That I was ready to have an honest dinner together. He bought it. He showed up wearing a fresh shirt, smiling, like none of it had ever happened. The host led him to the back room, where all four of us were already seated. His smile dropped like a stone. Samantha spoke first. "Sit down, David." He didn't move. Just stood there blinking. Jade stood. "Sit. We're not playing." He sat. For the next 10 minutes, the three of us took turns reading every lie, every transaction, every date, every screenshot. One by one. Laura recorded it all from the corner. He kept trying to interrupt, "That's not true, you misunderstood, let me explain," but we shut him down every time. Then I dropped the final blow. The one he wasn't ready for. "You got fired in January." Silence. His eyes went wide. "Who told you that?" "I called your job." He was quiet. Then he laughed. It wasn't funny. It was the kind of laugh people make when they know it's over. "I was going to tell you." "Were you going to tell Lily when we lost the house?" I snapped. He looked at me, suddenly small. "I didn't want to lose you." "You already did." Samantha shook her head. "You told me you loved me." Jade added, "You told me you were going to propose." He looked between us. I was confused. I stood up, trembling. "No. You were deliberate. You made choices. You built lies. You used us. You used our daughter. You took money, time, emotions, everything. I gave you a chance to come clean and instead you brought more lies." His eyes were wet. "I'm sorry." Too late. He tried to stand, but Laura stepped in front of the door. "You're not going anywhere yet." Then Jade said something I wasn't expecting. "I filed a fraud report with my bank. They're investigating the transfers." Samantha added, "So did I. And I'm considering pressing charges." His face turned white. "I could lose everything," he whispered. "You already have," I said. "And this time I'm not cleaning up your mess." After he left, pale, silent, completely broken, the rest of us sat in silence for a while. Jade looked shaken. Samantha looked tired. Laura just looked at me and said, "You're free now." It didn't feel like freedom yet. It felt like loss. Like being hit by a storm and stepping out of the wreckage with nothing left. That night, when I got home, I sat on the floor of Lily's room and watched her sleep. She was all that mattered now. In the days that followed, everything unraveled. David tried calling, texting, emailing, everything. I blocked him on every platform. He showed up once at the house, but I had Laura there, and she told him she'd call the cops if he didn't leave. He left. Eventually, the truth spilled into our families, our friends. People judged. Some pitted. A few said I should have seen the signs. But most just said, "You're strong." I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. I filed for divorce. Changed my locks. Changed my number. It's been 6 months. I'm still angry some days. Still tired. But I'm no longer drowning. Samantha and Jade both reached out a few times. They apologized again. We even met once, 3 women with nothing in common except the man who betrayed us. There's something weirdly comforting in knowing you weren't alone in the lie. David? Last I heard, he moved to New Mexico. I don't know what he's doing. I don't care. Lily's growing fast. She's smart, funny, and strong. And I remind myself every day that I'm building a better life, for her and for me. The hardest part wasn't losing him. It was accepting that the man I loved never existed. That I was in love with a version of someone that he pretended to be. But I'm still here. Still standing. Still healing. And maybe that's enough, for now.